Hey guys, welcome back. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe so you can catch new spills every week. And don't forget to hit that bell up top so we can squad up in the comments for the first hour. Alright, so for this video, we're going to talk about Black Panther versus the Silver Surfer and Galactus. And as a traditional Black Panther, he works smart and not hard. And when he needs help, he's going to get that help. But not just that, but give his help the tools they need to get the job done as well. And so this took place right after Civil War. And Civil War ended in the beginning of 2007, which is where this event happened in March of 2007, I want to say. But the crazy thing is about Civil War, there were a lot of repercussions around the event. And for very understandable reasons, most of the time when you hear about Civil War, it focuses mainly on the Mutant Registration Act and Tony Stark taking the side of it and Captain America being against it. And for good reason, because that's the main gist of the event. And you even had Spider-Man, who was neutral for a time before he went with Tony Stark. But outside of what's most commonly known, when it comes to the Fantastic Four, you had Reed Richards who sided with the act, but on the contrary, you had Sue and Johnny Storm who went against it. And then Ben Grimm, he decided to stay neutral. And I think he went to France or something like that shortly after for a while. But after all of that was said and done, after the events of Civil War and the Fantastic Four came back together, because of the events that had taken place, and especially with Sue and Reed Richards taking opposite sides, this put a huge rift in their relationship. And so because of that, they decided they needed to take some time off, just the two of them, get things back on track and rekindle that old flame, you know what I'm saying? And in doing this, Reed Richards didn't want to leave Johnny or Ben hanging by any means. So what he did was call in a favor with his old friend T'Challa, who agreed that he and Storm would take their places for a short while. In this way, if anything came up where the Fantastic Four was needed, they wouldn't be 2 members short. And T'Challa willingly agreed to this because he considers them to be family. And as a matter of fact, he's mentioned before, that's where Doom and other foes of the Fantastic Four often mess up. They forget that they're a family and not a team. And because of that, and really their history with the Black Panther over so many years, it's just more of the reason why he's the perfect choice. And then the fourth would be his wife, Storm, of course. And it's just funny thinking of that retcon of how Sue and T'Challa almost hooked up back in Wakanda. Well, T'Challa was single at the time, but it would have been hilarious if they worked out in this issue some type of nod and wink to that. But as it may be, that retcon happened after this issue came out, so we didn't get any of that, but this would have been the perfect place to play on it. But either way, not too long after Reed and Sue left, the Four started their first investigation like the next day. And T'Challa was meeting with Deathlock, who's no longer a murder machine at this point, but a fully cured human, as he would say. But one of the first instances that they're called to figure out is the mysterious missing body of the recently deceased Greg Willis, also known as Gravity. And Johnny Storm at this time is pretty much like everybody else watching right now, like who the hell is that? And for good reason, because even though he's had some important roles, he's not like one of your breakout or standout heroes. And even more importantly, at the time of his death, he was very new to the whole superhero thing, so he had a real short run. But his death was a real honorable one because he died saving Henry Pym, Janet Van Dyne, Deathlock, and Medusa. So when his body went missing, it wasn't only like the disgust and the disrespect of somebody messing with a dead body, but on top of that, we're talking about the grave of a fallen hero. But when this is done, the only thing T'Challa can really pick up is that this is done by like a black hole. And whoever did this didn't leave much of any kind of evidence behind. And after that, Ben Grimm was like, you know what, it'd be nice if we can just go up and ask the Watcher what happened. You know, he just right here on the moon, we can just fly out there and be like, hey, you seen anything? And at the time in this story, I'm like, okay, that is very convenient. And I would have dismissed it as a cop-out if the Watcher hadn't appeared shortly before that. So in Fantastic Four: The End, which also came out in March of 2007, I want to say. But with that series ending in issue number 6, and Fantastic Four continuing with issue 544, also titled The New Fantastic Four, and I want to say these comics came out like 2 or 3 weeks apart. They're real close. But with the issues releasing right next to each other and the events happening so close, that was like the only reason I was like, okay, I guess. Because otherwise, without the momentum of the continuity, I'd have been like, that's kind of a random reach. But he had been appearing in their issues prior, so it kind of set it up for this to happen. I just personally wanted that one piece executed a little bit differently. But when they get there, T'Challa has very little patience with the guy. He's a man on a mission. So as soon as he gets the slightest hint of Uatu, the Watcher, not wanting to cooperate, he's already planned for Storm to steal the ultimate nullifier so he can threaten Uatu for the information. And the funny thing is, as soon as he points it at him and he's like, speak or I'll shoot, Uatu starts talking. And Black Panther's like, oh, now you can talk now. But for those of you who aren't familiar with the Ultimate Nullifier, this is a weapon that's shown up plenty of times in Fantastic Four comics, and it's really just a device that violates the law of conservation of mass on a savage level. And it has the power to pretty much erase someone from existence. But even more importantly, if the person wielding it is of extreme intelligence and concentration, then they will be destroyed as well. And the Watcher warns T'Challa not to use it, at risk of him and Storm's future children never being born. But it de-escalates quickly after that, and both Ben and Storm was like, look, we just came to get some information. And And it's here where the Watcher uses a method that we don't see him use too often. Like, we've seen him share information with people before, like in Original Sin where he showed Nova a number of different instances that were happening in the multiverse. But what he does here is vastly beyond that, because he actually merges all of their minds with the Cyclopedia Universum, which instead of being an infinite number of screens showing certain moments at a time, the Cyclopedia Universum is actually everything happening at the same time, like your view from every Watcher, viewing every moment ever. And when they do this, Ben Grimm is the first one to figure out where Greg Willis is, and not only that, but who took him. And just as a caveat, for the amount of time that they were in there, Uatu did start to narrow it down and trying to close it in, really in a way just to funnel their vision more in the direction towards what they were looking for. And this leads them to Epoch, the daughter of Eon, the cosmic entity. And we're going to find out in a little while that the reason that she took Greg Willis was because she believed that he was needed for a great task. But initially, she doesn't even get a chance to tell them this. And that's mainly because she's afraid for her life because of the immediate danger that's before her, which is none other than the Silver Surfer. And you guys already know, the Silver Surfer is a scout for Galactus. And if you floating around in space and you planet size and he rolls up, it's a wrap. And at this time, with him being a herald for Galactus, he's just on his job. It's nothing personal, just find this dude some food and keep it pushing. That's it. But something I want you to keep in mind while this is going on is that the Surfer remembers the Fantastic Four. Most favorably, Sue and Reed, who are on their second honeymoon on Titan right now. Shout out Thanos, born and raised, and also committed mass genocide, but I'm sure that's not in the brochure. But Titan at one period of time was also considered a peaceful place of meditation as well. And at this point in time is where Reed and Sue decided to take their second honeymoon. And perhaps had they been with the team, some of this might have panned out a little differently. But when they arrive, Ben Grimm is the first one to try to negotiate with the Silver Surfer. And just so you know, everybody on the team has these like wristbands that sustain them while they're in space, just in case you were wondering why they don't have like air mask or anything like that. But when Ben makes his attempt to try to stop the Silver Surfer, like, he's the worst negotiator. And not to say that the Silver Surfer would have been convinced to stop or anything like that, at least not at this point, but anybody else here could have done a better job than Ben did. And as a result of it, he gets blasted. And so once the Silver Surfer shows himself to be hostile, this is where everybody else gets involved. And what's really interesting to me is when Storm comes out. And so I like the way this is handled. And it leaves you to the curiosity of how crazy powerful she is, because of the same concept of how she controls the weather on Earth with manipulating hydrogen and oxygen particles. Like, that concept still applies in space, because in space there's all kind of stray gases and minerals floating around, oxygen atoms, everything. Well, not enough oxygen to breathe, but with her having the power to control them, she brings them together, creating an atmosphere around the Silver Surfer. And once she's created that atmosphere, she hits him with lightning. And that's one thing I really liked about this issue, because even though it's a comic book, I like when things make sense. But I also like that it raises your curiosity to what other elements are in space that may not be known to man, but perhaps are part of an environment in other worlds that she can manipulate and possibly make them habitable. And also, with the amount of these gases available in space, just the crazy things that she could do with it. Like, I would love to see that explored someday. But either way, with everybody taking a crack at the Silver Surfer, it's really doing nothing but pissing him off, because this guy can literally fly through the sun and come out the other side like he just ran through the sprinklers or something. It's nothing to him. But that pertains more to his durability, but not his strength, because he's strong, but he's not like your Hulk per se. But when Ben, Johnny, and Storm are like hitting him with everything they got, they manage to knock him off of his board at one point, and when he calls his board back, T'Challa's riding on it. And it's not like Black Panther has control of it at this point. He's just hitching a ride back on his board, which is no small feat, because this thing is bouncing left and right and all over the place. But he stays right on it because he knows it's going to take him right back to the Silver Surfer. And so what happens when he gets close enough, he knows that the Surfer is vastly stronger than him. So he puts him in a specific hold that makes it extremely difficult for the Surfer to get out of. And he comes up with this idea because the Surfer is still humanoid form. And because of that, he figures, okay, the same rules apply. And it's really the same principle like if a 40-pound weight sitting on the ground. Of course, you could pick it up and curl it easy, but if you had to pick up that same weight and you couldn't bend your elbow, you're restricting the number of muscles you can use to lift that weight. And it's the same concept here. And when Black Panther has him hemmed up, Stardust arrives and shoots him in the back. And what's mad savage about Stardust is like when she shoots Black Panther, she puts Ben into this bubble and is about to hurl him into like the closest sun. And when she does that, Norrin, Silver Surfer, is just like, okay, wait, that's a bit much. Like, chill out. And he's like, that one's my friend. relax, don't kill him. And you could see the look on Ben's face. He was terrified. Like he really thought it was all over in that very moment. But with the surfer getting Stardust to come out of murder mode, at this point we get the opportunity for everybody to kind of talk things out and try to figure out what's the resolve. And as far as the surfer and Stardust, both heralds of Galactus by the way, they're not moving. And Ben makes the argument that I'm not gonna let you eat Epoch. And of course Storm and Johnny agree with Ben. But T'Challa on the other hand, he's like, hey look, that's not our problem. We came here to get the body, we're gonna do that which we came to do, and after that we're going home. But at that very moment that T'Challa and Thing are going back and forth, Galactus arrives. And when he arrives, there's no more debating. And what this does is shift the tide to where T'Challa understands that he has to do what he needs to do in order to stop Galactus. And for him to do that, he needs to go get his Galactus contingency, which at this point in time are still in Wakanda. So he calls for Deathlock to bring the ship, and he gets out of there. And of course he told Storm he was going, he ain't just dip out on her like that. But the way he leaves, he's just like, I got a plan. But for the most part, everybody's looking at him like, did dude just leave? And did he leave to get the plan or was leaving the plan? But with T'Challa gone, Ben's like, well okay, he might have been afraid, but we're gonna fight. And we know that's not the case, but from his perspective, that's how it looks. But seconds before Ben re-engages with the surfer, a bright light shows up and we have another visitor, and it's Gravity. And this was Epoch's plan, and in fact it was a plan that she had put in place for many years, and that plan was to make Gravity a protector of the universe, or a replacement for Quasar. And with her inheriting the role of the keeper of cosmic awareness, and also sharing a number of abilities that her father has, who is a cosmic entity, she couldn't let Gravity just die. And that's why she stole his body, brought him back to life, and equipped him with the power and knowledge to do the job. But jumping back to Black Panther, he's pulling out all the stops trying to get back to Wakanda, then jump back right into the fight. And although it doesn't mention here, you guys see my other videos about the techno-organic jungle, but this gives an example of what I was talking about in that video, as we see T'Challa speak with Taku, who's Minister of Communications. And pretty much what he does when he speaks to Taku on the comms is tell him to get the contingency plan ready. But in addition to this weapon labeled Plan G, he also has another trick up his sleeve which he's actually going to use to get there a lot faster. And the other weapon that he's going to use in conjunction are the Frogs of Solomon. And I know at this point you guys are like, what is in that box? And we'll get to that in just a minute. But with the Frogs of Solomon, instead of taking 38 minutes to get back to the fight, since one frog can manipulate space and the other time, he's able to also use them to get there instantaneously. And if you guys want to know more about the frogs, I talk about them in another video, and I have the annotation pop up around here. So be sure to have those on so you can catch that too. But from this point, he uses the frogs to teleport himself and Michael back to the location. And when they get there, he leaves the frogs with Michael, because if for any reason the Galactus contingency doesn't work, the frogs are his only chance at trying this again. And because of that, if need be, he can always go back in time, giving himself as many opportunities as needed. And so now the way that the Galactus contingency works, it's an armor with technology which is based on the same tech that Dr. Doom used to take the power of the Silver Surfer, but with more advanced features based off of that technology. And so what this armor can do is absorb cosmic energy, which it can also distribute back at will. And in addition to that, if the person wearing it can also project energy, they can use that as well with the energy that the armor has absorbed. And we'll see examples of both of those instances playing out in just a moment, because the original intention of the armor was designed with the purpose of targeting the Silver Surfer, draining his energy and using that back against him and Galactus. And that's exactly what he does, because as soon as the Silver Surfer shoots at him, the Surfer can no longer control his blast or stop it, and T'Challa continues to drain him until he has the strength of a normal man. And so in this instance, with a number of different variables going on, T'Challa also improvises, and he recognizes, since he has the help of Gravity, who's been recently resurrected, the Human Torch is here, who can also fly and project energy, and the recently drained Silver Surfer has to fight him hand to hand, he realizes that the contingency will be much more effective if handed to Johnny. And so in this case where Gravity was tied up with Stardust, the Human Torch can now free up Gravity by overwhelming Stardust, and this allows Gravity, the biggest gun on the field, to go for Galactus. And I know off the bat that sounds like a lot, but man, the plan was flawless nonetheless. And once again, that wasn't his original plan. Like, his original plan was to drain the Silver Surfer and use that power against the Surfer and Galactus, because the Galactus contingency was a contingency designed if Galactus had come to Earth. But in this case, with T'Challa returning and seeing a new player in the field on his side, he adjusted his plan to play toward his strengths, none of which having to do with Ben Grimm, because I think he was still feeling some type of way from their argument earlier. Nah, that's just petty. Maybe he was being a little petty, we don't know. But either way, with Gravity here being insanely powerful now, he actually uses his power to feed Galactus instead of trying to kill him. And this actually works out because when he feeds Galactus, he makes an agreement with him to where Epoch will be exempt from being one of his meals. And that's really the only way you can come to any kind of deal with Galactus. He has to be fed. Because if he dies, it'll cause an imbalance to the whole ecosystem of the universe. But that'll do it for this one, guys. But just as some extra info, Gravity didn't hold that position much longer. He soon after told Epoch that he just wanted to live his life. He's only 19 years old. And she was like, I'll grant your wishes. I'll find another champion. I just appreciate you saving my life though. But let me know your thoughts down in the comments. If you enjoyed the video and you learned something new, smash that like button. And if you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to catch the spills every week. I got links here at the end for more Black Panther videos or even my Black Panther playlist. Feel free to check those out and I'll catch you on the next one. Alright. Later.